Good evening. How are you today? Well, it's about 60, not bad, and I'm dressed a little warmer. And the remainder of this Thomas Jefferson weather report is that there's no wind. And it's clear sky, so it might be a good night for stargazing. There's only one story that a lawyer like me could be interested in today. And I have to confess that I was actually doing lawyering, so I had to catch summations of what people said was happening. And that's not always a reliable way to know what did happen. First of all, when a witness testifies, and Trump was on the witness stand today at his civil trial, which is to cut up his empire, his financial empire. The first question about the witness is he a truth teller or a liar? Now the jury is not out on the question of whether this man lies. He lies eternally. And when I've been asked before about statements by Trump, I've said, and I still subscribe to the view, that the only time you can rely on what Trump says is when he makes an admission, a confession against his own interest. Now, the setting today is an interesting one because Trump, who insists that he is such a persuader of the common folk and they're with him, he chose not to have a jury trial. So when he was in court today, who was he talking to? Well, not me, but maybe that 30% of those wackos who call themselves MAGA nuts. And I think that's about it. Now, some people who see a courtroom expect there to be a level of dignity by those who participate in it. And sometimes passions do rise, and this dignity that you'd expect to see in a courtroom is harder to find. Now, judges usually can bring that down unless the judge is in the middle of it himself or herself. In this case, the judge showed enormous restraint, but I think we may question whether he showed too much restraint. So what am I talking about? When Trump was on the stand, and you might expect that he would be testifying why his properties were valued as they were, he instead attacked the judge, sitting just feet away from him, and he attacked the prosecutor, the attorney general of the civil case, who was sitting in the front row with other observers. He attacked them both. Now, one of those two was a violation of his gag order, if I remember the wording of it, that is the AG. He went on to sweep poetic, as best he can do, about his properties. But when it came to costs and values and so forth, he disappeared kind of in a cloud of dust. And wasn't there a way to ask questions to force him to answer? Now everybody says, "Oh, this is a guy." I think that in that courtroom, well, there's no other word but afraid. You have to go toe to toe with this guy. You cannot sit on your hands and say, "Well, the truth will out." Now, the truth will out in this case, that is, this trial, because the judge who was sitting there, whom he attacked, is the one who is going to write the opinion in this case. So Trump may have thought he was smart by doing this. What could the judge have done? Well, the judge suggested he was going to do some of those things. He was going to compel him to answer the question. He was going to compel him to not go beyond the question. The judge said he didn't want to hear what Trump had to say about everything else in the world. And we talk about parenting, about how you don't reward juvenile delinquents in your own home, or truants, by giving them a little language and then doing nothing about it. And this is the single most mistaken part of the process in court today. And if nobody knows how to cross-examine, and I don't know the person who did, and I haven't seen the transcript, and maybe they've done some of the things that I would say, but it goes like this. You don't say, what in the world do you think this property was worth? That's a direct question. What you say, isn't it a fact that your home was actually a third of what you declared on your financial papers? Yes or no? That's it. No other discussion. Yes or no. And when he says, well, there's more to say, it's more complicated than that, well, your attorney will take care of that on cross. One of the most powerful tools a lawyer has in a courtroom is the power of cross-examination, because you can ask leading questions of an adverse party. Plainly, that's Trump himself. You don't have to say, why did you do this? And there are two reasons for that. When you ask a person why, you're asking for the mechanisms of his or her thinking process. Well, how do you cross-examine that? Person says it and it's in the record. If this was a jury, that would be a terrible thing to happen in this case. Now, I don't think the judge is being fooled, but Trump is trying to have it both ways, to turn the courtroom into a street fight and challenge the judge's steel to meet him toe-to-toe. And he failed, I think. Because at some point, the judge stopped instructing Trump to do what any other witness would have to do. So how would you do that? Well, first of all, the questions have to be leading questions. Second, the judge can ask questions himself. I don't believe he's done that yet, but he could. Well, he did in terms of the contempt proceeding about whether or not Trump was violating the gag order as to the judge's clerk. But I don't think he's asked any other questions. And the second thing you can do is when Trump starts talking about his Scotland properties and how beautiful they are, and how he convinced the people there and how happy they are that he's there. It's not responsive to any question, any proper question that could be asked. And there are two ways to do it. You cut him off, and it requires the lawyer usually to make the objection, but the judge can do it, as we say, lawyers invoking the Latin, sua sponte. You say, strike all of that discussion about Scotland. Please answer the question. And if he repeatedly refuses to answer the question, you kick him off the witness stand. Now, I haven't listened to the commentators, but I haven't heard anybody discuss the case that way. And it matters. Now, I think this judge has the steel to do what's necessary. And I think he decided that it doesn't matter if this clown, Trump, goes on and on, pretending he's at a rally, one of his Hitler rallies, in a courtroom of the United States, because in the end, the judge gets the final say, because Trump and his attorneys weren't smart enough to realize that if they were going to put him on the stand, he had a better chance with the jury. Get a juror like him that would endlessly pester the others on the jury. So, what are the benefits to Trump? Well, if this didn't prove how desperate he is, think about it. He's in court every day. This is his bread and butter. This is what he's lied about, the extent of his wealth, the extent of his debt, D-E-B-T. And when you have that kind of a purpose in mind, there are no holds barred. So what happened in an American courtroom with a former president was a spectacle that no one should see, from the lowest person in America to the highest person with the most wealth he claims, to do the things that he does. It's just not acceptable. And our officials fail us when they let this happen. And I don't know how you can fail to see the consequences. And doing nothing when you're engaged in a fight is to lose the fight. Now, because it was not televised, the fight is it's lost in an America that doesn't read a damn thing. And my reaction to trying the case, say the federal case, for example, a criminal case, I thought public should be able to see it. But if Special Counsel Jack Smith's group doesn't take the fight to Trump in court, should he take the stand, that could be a debacle. And Trump is trying to make this the case like he's being prosecuted because they don't want him to become president. That's his message. And see how unfair they are to me in this courtroom. And I don't think an American could possibly see this and think this is the kind of behavior we expect from the President of the United States, a past president, or one who wants to be a president. And he wants to be a president so that he can save himself from the punishment for the crimes he's committed. So, anyhow, those are a few of my thoughts about what's going on in court. And if I were to sum it up, it would be fight, be present, do not be passive. Treat each element of the case as a significant statement about our system of justice. Also, ask leading questions. Don't ask direct questions of this guy. Narrow the point to where he's answering yes or no to every question. Frame them carefully. Frame them in a way that he can't wander around. And when he does wander, move to strike the testimony. And if he becomes uncontrollable, have the marshals come in and take his ass out of the courtroom. It's time that we realize we're in the fight for this nation's life. It's time that we realize our dignity is involved. When we fail to fight, when we fail to follow simple rules that have hundreds of years of practice and experiences in courtrooms, borrowed from other nations. So centuries of learning about how to approximate as best one can something like laboratory conditions to arrive at a finding of fact and of law that can be respected and that can be implemented and executed. That's what we have here, and we failed it. Now, a good friend of mine and a doctor told me today that when you have a spirited conversation or a pleasant experience, it increases the dopamine, and that's a good thing. So, but he also told me there are people out there who think we have to regulate that feeling, and they want to do it in connection with social media, because social media may increase that dopamine when you go on there and you get into an arm wrestling match, metaphorically speaking, with some other person that you know from the medium. Okay, well that's what I got for the day. I think it's a sad day when we have this miscreant testifying in court, defying centuries of learning to difficult court proceedings. And it's unsurprising in a way, because this is a man who believes in power by force, not by law. And that's it. That explains everything about the man. Power by force, not by law. This encompasses lying, coercing, threatening, disrespect, slander, all the things that a real criminal is really good at. And that's all that Trump is good at. So, I went out a little late, so it's getting a little dark. So, I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.